call the area planning commission meeting for February. If we would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Gary, would you like to lead?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, roll call.
Darren Price.
Here.
Leo DeKing.
Here.
Brian Durham.
Here.
Dale Munson.
Oh, and Dale called me. He isn't going to be here. He's on duty.
Excuse me. Gary Naylor.
Here.
Bob Stewart.
Here.
Brian Robb.
Here.
Bill Mackey.
Here.
Brian Hensley.
Here.
Bill McDaniel.
Present.
Jeff Sanders. Jeff Wesley. And me.
Awesome. We have a quorum. Approval of the January 28, 2021 area planning meeting.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second. A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Moving on to agenda item 4, comprehensive plan update. One of the things I'd like to share, this past week there was a published advertisement for RFP from Klein Peter about the comprehensive plan. So we are moving forward on a comprehensive plan. We have a subcommittee formed, and Jeff, what are there, 7? We have 7 to 10 members on that, Jeff? Something like that. I don't remember specifically off the top of my head the number of members on that we're starting to lay the groundwork to get that completed.
That committee, Brian, if you don't mind, it is made up of
community members. I know myself is on it.
Names,
yeah.
Just
Bill's on that committee. Somebody from Purdue Extension is on that committee. Trying to remember everybody.
local Purdue
Yes.
Extension.
Yes. Trying to remember everybody off the top of my head, and the foundation, who was instrumental in the 2 years ago in starting the comprehensive plan, and really we're using a lot of the Purdue data that was collected. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. So we have that. There's an outline. Jeff has seen the outline. We haven't talked about the outline, but he's at least had the opportunity to take a look at what's in the outline, just to meet the criteria from Okra, make sure we have all the boxes checked.
Are we using any of the county and city elected officials?
Yes. Yes. We have a representative from county council. We have a commissioner and a city council person represented on there. Working on that. An item that's not on the agenda I'd like to move to is the solar facilities, solar farms and facilities ordinance that, or plan, I guess, not really an ordinance, that was sent out earlier this month with an opportunity to speak about that. It's in its infancy. One of the things, talking to Jeff, that I wanted to make sure that I don't want to try to write something in the middle of somebody applying for the potential of a solar farm. I want to have it beforehand to be proactive. That way, when, if ever, it does come up, we already have the rules in place and we're not trying to create rules as we go. And I think that's, a good way to look at that.
If I could add one thing related to that,
Yes.
it's that if it's anything like it was with the wind energy, companies that were looking at developing wind farms, they weren't going to look at you until you had an ordinance in place. And I suspect that with the major companies interested in developing a solar farm, there's probably a comparable perspective. So.
And this particular document really only deals with solar on an industrial level. They're not utilities. IURC has said that they're not utilities because they're They're not providing power directly to consumers. This is somebody who is selling power to a company that is providing power to consumers, if that makes any sense. So
Basically the same as the wind.
the same, yeah, the exact same as the wind, where they're selling the power to somebody else. What's not included in here, which probably should be included in here, is the residential solar by right, and business solar, like if you want to put it on your business and it's for yourself and you're producing your own power as an accessory use, that is not included in here. This afternoon, if you were able to check your email, you got the model solar ordinance that was developed by IU and Great Plains as a guide to look at. There's a lot of things that aren't included in this that are different because it deals with the residential.
I have a question.
Yes.
Jeff, I have a question here. There are homes that have put solar panels
Yes.
in.
Yes.
How has that worked out?
Okay, I shoehorned them in as a electrical upgrades. I think it would be wise because, as Brian asked me about one electric project, an electric upgrade was $43,000. Part of that is the solar, but it also will also be a tool to us to actually calling them out separately in the ordinance, and then also as the permits. It allow us to actually track how much individual investment there is on property owners and businesses with the solar. So that was all I had with strictly the residential. But I think that, and as I'm going through the series of ordinances that were in the back of the model ordinance, so what I'm doing is I'm doing a comparison contrast with what, the draft that Brian prepared, the model ordinance, and I have 8 or 9 other ones from the state of Indiana to see what they have, what they don't have. I already rejected a couple because they just went over the top crazy with things.
I'm
So
seeing more and more homes being built with the heat pumps and geothermal
Yep.
systems. They're very efficient.
Yeah, and with the heat pumps and geothermals, well, that's just part of the regular, it's part of the plumbing.
Yeah.
Plumbing and mechanical. But yeah, and it's gonna keep growing as far as the interest for those, especially as they become more efficient. And then the more that's installed, the more that's produced, of course, is then you have the economics of higher production capacity, and the prices dropping from that.
Brian, I've had some email problems, and I haven't received either one of them. So, but I've talked about the one that you sent out earlier, and I really think there's a couple of things that we need to address and look at. We need to look at stormwater. Something in there regulating the stormwater and make sure that we don't impede on the neighbor with that.
That's a big part
drainage.
of some of those ordinances.
We have neglected to address that in the CAFO, and I think maybe we need to readdress that as we get closer to that public hearing, of maybe trying to write something in there for the stormwater issues. Another thing, I'm very much pro conviction or pro ag. And what concerns me is these solar farms or companies are coming in and offering very lucrative deals to eat up our ag crop acres. And I think we need to try to address that from the standpoint of there needs to be a consequences for that landowner for turning over that crop ground into solar farms, because he or she's not just making the decision for his generation, they're making it possibly for the next generation of ag as well.
If you go off the Interstate 40 in Richmond, that's
Yeah.
What is that taking care of, east side of Richmond?
I came across information about how many homes it's providing for, but I don't have that
Well,
information.
they're
in my
doing it for
head right
homes
now.
residential over there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the Henry County REMC's
And
already.
also the Henry County REMC also, but but as you're talking about, Gary, I think it's not a perfect parallel, but I think it kind of parallels what you probably saw happening and how once there was the initial boom, the gold rush in the ethanol. Well, that happened then with the prices because it was going elsewhere, and then all the other effects it was having negatively with other parts of the market, such as where it's this livestock shifted to other forms where there is no longer, corn that was being produced for the tortilla market. Well, that's now being produced for this, and then it's causing, which is related to the tortilla shortages and riots over in Mexico. So it's the potential disrupting a lot of other things other than just the future of the
I mean,
land.
I think Jeff made mention to it last month when we were having a conversation, he and I. But Jeff, you can allude to it, but these commercial industrial farms, they're not talking about 100 acres here and there and yonder. They're talking thousands of acres, aren't they?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Right.
Yeah.
You're talking at least a couple hundred acres.
And they don't want to build these solar farms on the hills and hollers. They want it up here in Posey Township,
Potentially, yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
And that's our prime
Same place as
farmland.
wind farms too.
Yeah, well, but they take up a quarter of an acre,
Right. Versus,
you know,
Go to White
versus-
County, you got more than a quarter acre, I guarantee.
per windmill. But,
Per windmill. Well, you talk about 300 windmills, you got.
you know, we're talking potentially
Oh, I'm in, I want to
640 acre tracts.
Yeah, in agreement with you here.
I've been playing wind tag with the planning director up in Marshall County about the wind farms, because I put a request in for information from those who had successful projects, they've adopted ordinances, the problems they've run across through the public process. We know there's a lot of absurd things that are thrown out in opposition, but there's other legitimate concerns that do get raised. And so, like I said, I've been playing phone tag, so he sent me a separate email to contact him, and he's on vacation last week. But it's so we can talk through his experiences of going through these also. I think that's something we also need to do at the various places, is, for example, one that's close we can ask is, what in the heck happened, is Shelby County.
Yeah. If you drive through Shelby County, it's, stop, industrial solar farm.
Somebody's done something very negative
Yeah.
with the solar farms over there in that area. And
Exactly, so I think the other one is also.
We know the planning
not only
director over
the
there.
Probably learned more,
I've talked
just
to
like
him.
anything else, from the negatives.
I'm related to him.
But I think also with those that have had a positive experience, what is it that resulted in them having a positive experience with it?
And I understand, they're paying astronomical price per acre, and, I mean, I've heard numbers thrown out at, 500 an acre,
We're paying it through
I've heard
taxes.
900 to 1,000
which is, that's
Well,
per acre per year.
per acre per year.
That's
They're
going to be
paying.
the kicker, because this is where the government wants to go, and they're going to give billions of dollars to communities to do this. And so even if you're looking at prime farm grant giving away, man, when you start giving out $30,000, $40,000 an acre, people are going to do it. And we're selling in China now for that kind of price.
Then you run into the scarcity of land,
That's
because
right.
prices are already through the roof.
That's right.
There was a large
I mean,
auction,
in the
2 months,
80s
2
and the
months ago?
90s, we went through that with the housing boom
Yeah.
and
And now there's no houses.
the big cities moving out into the country and taking up acreage. Well, then, when ag had to make adjustments to continue feeding the world, being able to feed the world, then ag was criticized for their technology and whatnot, and we'll go through the same thing. They want food, but they don't
It's
want
a cycle, Gary.
it raised like we have to raise it.
We had to produce
Well,
enough.
then another one of the questions just is I think what was the State Board of Accounts that actually had to answer how those, the taxation as far as the windmills go, what part is actually taxed as, the commercial and the permanent improvements. So I think, that'll be another one that needs to be, need to have an answer, is that how are things being managed from the tax aspect, on the tax base?
Well, I would hope that we could address that from the tax standpoint. It would no longer be taxed as ag ground, it would be
Yeah.
industrial or whatever.
You can, and a lot of communities are actually earmarking it for TIF, they're TIFing it and essentially allowing it for redevelopment, kind of allowing you to have more use with it. I'd say one of the things, when I'm looking through this, one thing that I think we all need to get our heads around is the permit fees are, in my opinion, way too low. Like I'm looking at maybe 100 times the amount that we're asking for in this, just because if you think about what it's putting on our director, what it's putting on our department to actually monitor it, you're talking about, how many projects do we have where it's a 300-acre project, right?
Yeah.
And what would that look like if that was something else? So I think those,
Understandable. Okay.
with the amount of time that Mr. McDaniel is going to put into it, the board's going to have into it, I think those need to be substantially higher.
Yeah, well, the other ones that are gonna be really the improvement, location permit, because then we'll have to have then for some of the other aspects is, you're gonna have to have requirements of, okay, whether we sign off then on the engineers that they have to go through and do the project, what we end up getting, such as what points we have the sign-offs, meeting you there for this or that, and what sort of professional, technical sign-offs they get, because we're gonna have the engineers to do it. So we need to work out the front end, how we do it, rather than trying to work on the fly, what sort of protocols we have with the inspections. Because with the wind farm, my butt wasn't gonna climb up those and inspect, because number one is that I didn't have the skills anyway. Plus, I don't like heights.
To climb up it or
I'm
to
gonna
inspect
climb
it?
it. Oh, hey, you know me, I fall off ladders. That's what you're thinking, wasn't it?
You fall off stages.
Yes, I fall off ladders and stages. Yeah, picture me 200 feet up, yeah. Dancing around an arsenal.
And one other thing too that I would add, and I know this was before my time, but wind, I'm assuming there was a lot of discussions about decommissioning agreements and things like that. I don't know that it's quite as big of an issue when it comes to solar, but it is still something I think we need to have something in there. A lot of communities requiring bonding, the company to be bonded, something like that, just to kind of make it comfortable with other people. But it's kind of, to me, there's also got to be a little bit of responsibility on the homeowner or the property owners when you're negotiating with these folks that what does happen to your land if they were to walk away. So, but I think this is a phenomenal start. But I do think we need to add a decommissioning agreement and some other things like that will require.
That's pretty much consistent through the various ones I saw that were adopted by different jurisdictions.
No, I don't, and with wind, I know there were 20-page decommissioning agreements and all of those. I do, and I think that will be good for us to look at. I do think that there might be a difference between wind and solar in that regard. If they stop, the quarter acre thing's a perfect example. If somebody walks away from wind and there's a quarter acre huge giant thing that costs $100,000 to take down or whatever, the farmer might very likely just leave it there and farm around it. It would be very irregular for the farmer to just ignore a whole 100 acres full of solar panels and not do anything with it to not return it to farmland. So
Absolutely.
I think to me it's a little bit less of an issue, but I do think we want to look into that, investigate that, and protect ourselves.
Yeah, because one of the other ones that you see, and most of them also, is requirements regarding the vegetation, because obviously you're losing it as far as any type of actual productive agricultural land for the most part. So several of them are requiring native plant species, basically bee attractants, things like that support the invertebrate life, your pollinators. Like I said, mostly it's native plant materials, things along those lines. So that's another thing really we'll have to look at is it's going to be how do we do what's necessary without being overly nosy, I suppose. But yeah, it's finding a happy medium of what's required to be in the field.
Well, it's my understanding too, I mean, as far as stormwater leaving that property, those solar panels create a lot more runoff, from what I understand and what I've researched, what little I've researched, but
Yeah,
I definitely think we
impermeable
need to
surface.
protect the adjoining landowners with some type of language in there for stormwater. As well as, I think we ought to go back and readdress the CAFO proposed ordinance with some stormwater language in it. Because those large buildings they create
Absolutely.
a lot of runoff,
And honestly, stormwater wasn't something that came to my mind when I was,
we really
Yeah.
never, we never
We didn't think about
I
it.
mean,
thought about it.
drainage did, because drainage is in here, but stormwater wasn't one of the
Yeah.
first things that came to mind, and it should have
Because the other
been.
one is in how you treat the stormwater, to then if there is, say, a contaminant release, that your stormwater isn't going to mix with the contaminants.
Right, exactly. Or leave the property too soon, too quickly.
Exactly.
We already had that
Do what?
problem with this deal.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
We got a whole Waterloo Road problem over here because of this deal.
And Gary, I'm in agreement with you, like protecting agriculture is super important. But I also agree that if somebody wants to enter into an agreement with somebody, if two private people want to enter into an agreement, who am I to tell them that they can't do what they want? with
and I
land?
understand,
So it's a balance, right? We're trying to balance.
it's
The two
a,
things.
I do have one question. If you were gonna put a field of solar panels in, how close to the community do you have to be to do that?
Okay, well, you can, you talking about what, from the transmission system?
Yeah, because Richmond, you got over there off of I-70 at the 40 exit.
It's just like anything else, is if you periodically need a station to basically boost it, you'll have a booster station. But they will look for as close as they can for a transmission system, and that's where the interconnection
They couldn't put
would
it
be.
10 miles out of town at Bentonville or something like that.
Well, you
there's
can
transmission
because,
lines out
there.
because, there's a,
it's easy to get to the grid out there, that's why it,
Okay.
You don't have a whole
Yeah,
lot
because
of
there's-
things in the way.
Rush County, Decatur County, or Rush County, Henry County, there's one going up there, and it's literally splitting right in the center of the county. And half of it's in Henry County, and half of it's in,
And those are both 10 miles away from the cities.
exactly right.
15 miles.
yeah, because there's through west part of the county, we also have, there's drip transmission. I think there's also two RAMC transmission lines that go through. So, yeah, there's a
But
lot of
particularly in this
potential.
one, it limits it to, you have to be at least 200 feet from another zoning district. So outside of agriculture and industrial, you'd have to be, so say you're in Bentonville, there's a local business district in Bentonville, you gotta be 200 feet from where that local business
Okay.
to erect a.
But it doesn't have to be within the city limits or within a mile of the city. It can
No.
be put anywhere in the county. It's
Yeah.
transmission lines.
And,
Okay.
another aspect might be to look at, and I haven't found a clause in any of the others, is that finding a good clause of, because it may be in some cases, whereas some of the old industrial park land is, whether or not it's questionable whether it's viable to redevelop as far as the industrial base we used to have. So is a reuse and encouraging a reuse of industrial facilities as smaller scale, solar generators, which maybe they'd be in interest, something like that, being as close as they are to the substation for Duke. I don't know, but.
And then one of the other things that's also not addressed in here is use of right of way. If a person, a entity who decides to build a large solar facility, are they guaranteed use of right of ways to get to transmission lines? It's also not addressed in here, and that's something that we'll have to think about and address. Do you want to grant them the right to
Well,
maintain their lines
one of the
by
things, one of the
right
things we
or
currently
a
have.
permit, or how we want to grant that?
Okay, that we've done, is any time with some of the different, basically some of the internet transmission lines that have gone through. What I have always done when it's in the county, what I've always done with the city, if they want to pass under or want to make use of the right of way, they got to get the permission as Gary knows, multiple times when he's a commissioner, they came through to get the permission from the commissioners to use it. And they want detailed information of where you're gonna pass, what you're gonna do to make use of the county right-of-ways. And I do the same thing when someone would be coming up for something, and then they'd have to go to the Board of Public Works. Oh, sorry, Bob, didn't mean to step on you there.
What?
Oh, you were asking questions, I started to speak.
No, you're fine, you're fine,
Okay.
no problem.
All right.
Who, the power company's the one buying this land up then, right? Or is it some other entity out
It's-
It's
here?
usually somebody else.
It's a third party,
Yeah,
basically.
selling
Third party.
to, selling to, yeah, leasing land.
They lease
They're not
they
buying.
lease the land, they develop, and then they look for a market to buy the.
Right.
Really?
The power company that purchases it might be in Maryland or Utah or,
Really?
Odds are you won't use it here.
yeah.
And an analogy that came up with is okay, it's sort of like you have you have different people with an apple cooperative. So everybody's putting their apples into this one bag, this one source. But, so someone, say in Kentucky is buying say, X number of apples. Well, it could be your apples, it could be his apples, or his apples, but they're still being sold. And that's kind of the way it works with this electricity. Everything, it's all going in a big basket, so you don't know who's gonna
Well,
buy
I'd
it.
wanna find out if we had a Chinese board of directors on that basket. Because I guarantee you've got some.
Yeah, looking at like Hoosier Energy, for instance, who is the power provider for our 3 REMCs. They have a coal-fired facility in southern Illinois. There's a coal-fired facility in southern Indiana. There's a natural gas facility in southern Indiana. There's a wind farm in northern Indiana that all supplies power here in Fayette County. Yeah, through the transmission lines that'll supply power here in Fayette County.
I had somebody once explain it to me like a water line. If you've got a 1-inch water line running from here to Newcastle, and there's spigots off of it, here, there, and yonder, all the electric goes in that pipe, and whoever turns their spigot on, that's where the electric goes off first, or the water. And it may be used in Newcastle, the wind energy in Posey Township, if those windmills ever come, they might be used in Newcastle, but it might go on north clear to Michigan before it's
It's like
necessary.
California using Colorado water.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, it's just like one of the contracts for one of the end users for the energy that was produced in Posey County. But, the county, the first one, they had all of them here in Indiana. Well, one of the big buyers with it, to give you an idea how the system works, one of their biggest buyers was Pacific Power and Light. So that gives you an idea how the market is spread out.
So our purpose here, Brian, is just, this is what the ordinance is. It's not much committing to anything, it's just understanding what it's all about, and then we need to make plans to look at what we may want to look at in the future.
Exactly, so it's having something in place that, okay, if someone wishes to make that investment, they can make the investment, we have the ordinance in place.
Yes, okay.
But it's also having the ordinance in place, but in the meantime is then you have the property rights of the person who's leasing the land. Then you also have the property rights of everybody else that's in the area who might potentially be affected, whether it's
How
runoff
we want to
or
handle
any
it.
other aspect.
Do we
Yeah.
know how these counties that have bought into it have handled it? Do we have any information from them?
That's why one of the ones to contact is the fellow in Marshall County, which is why I think as we're going through this is to then find out then, say, various members, I'll do some of it, but also maybe some members of the plan.
I'm sure many of them will say, I wish we'd done this, we'd done that. So
Well, that's the idea, as we go through this. Because because we did that, we did visit a couple of counties when we were working on the wind farm.
Yeah. Learn from their mistakes, in other words.
I think we can use our attorney as well.
Yeah, he's worked.
To great advantage because you've been very active with the Rush County ordinance, have you not?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it seems to be working thus far. And I think we've said it before, we sure don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And part of that is, as
That's
Bob
gotten us
said,
in
is-
trouble before here in Fayette
Yeah.
County, trying to reinvent the wheel.
And as Bob said, and part of this not reinventing the wheel is also learning from the mistakes of
Yes,
others.
yeah.
Avoid those pitfalls.
But I think we want to be very proactive in trying to get a ordinance put together so that we can have it on the books and have it ready for those potential developments as they expand from Rush County. Because they're not going to stop at Rush County, this company, I don't think. Are they, Jeff?
Well, it's a couple companies. I mean, there's one company starting north, and there's another company coming in that's gonna be even bigger. I mean, I think it's coming. It's just, you gotta decide whether or not you want your county to have them or not.
Exactly.
Well, and
That's it.
the other thing Brian pointed out is the fact that if someone wants to sell their farm, I can't keep them from doing it, but if it's going to affect other farms that's by, then you do have to have something in place to say, well, you've got to get the people next to you because it could affect them.
Of course.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all part of the public process, what
Yeah.
it is, giving people to say, is because it's not just the person who's petitioning to have the action done, but the people who are responding in essence, or if they have a problem, is they're also basically, they're petitioning back to
And
them.
it can't just be the
Have
fact, I
their
don't want him to make the money I could have made, but it's the fact that what damage is it going to do to you to have this?
voice. Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that's what most of the resistance really is with people.
Afraid of what it's going to do to their values or whatever.
Yeah.
So, how quickly are we thinking that we need to have something to go to public hearing with?
Summer,
2 months,
yeah,
3 months?
May, June. I think we can
I
have
think we
something.
need to set some goals.
Yeah, I think
Well,
May or June, we can have
Well,
something.
I would say
legitimate.
that, okay, is if someone else wants to also do a comparison, other people want to do a comparison contrast between those other ordinances and then with what Brian had and then with the model, the more people the merrier. But I think is give a 1 month at least, do the comparison contrast and try to make some of the contacts.
Yeah.
Then with those particular items, as we're coming across some things, is we can then do with some additional drafts of other potential language or the things we don't have in there, but other things to actually include. So I think that, okay, we can have some things added to a little bit more in a second draft, but I think the big one, I think we can get it done is as far as, really doing the comparison to see what those others are, and then, okay, here's the other ones, so perhaps then next month is we can look and say, okay, here's some of the things we found, and these are the things that really make sense that we talked about that we can actually include.
Well,
One quick question, Jeff, I'm going to ask you. What do they do to induce people to tie, do you have a choice to tie into this, or you want to keep your gas or oil? You've got the solar panels here, it's hooked into the system.
You're talking about for like property owners, like?
Yes,
homeowners?
correct, yeah.
It's not, it took me a while to get this too. It's not something that you can just tie into as a property owner. This is on a whole other.
Yeah.
This goes to the high voltage transmission.
You almost do it to an idea that there's no benefit to local homeowners in regards to power.
Okay, this is not really affecting homes in Rush County, then, in that county, at
No,
this time.
Nobody's gonna get any benefit. That was a big discussion during wind is, well, what, it's the same thing. I mean, the power's going into the grid and there is no, you're not getting cheaper rates, you're not getting use of clean energy specifically or anything.
Okay, so you're looking at commercial industrial use of this. What if they don't want to use it?
Well, they're not using it either.
no. It's just going on to the grid.
They're going onto the grid, but they're,
It's
So-
purchased
and someone-
by-
Then someone's buying it, whoever knows, who knows where, who knows who, but someone else is, is buying it.
I'm not doing something stupid, but I am. We want to-
The thing, like-
Theoretically, you're using it now. I mean, you
Yeah.
could argue you're using some type of clean energy at some level in your house
Okay.
right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, because, for example, is Duke already if you're a Duke customer already, Duke has a alternative energy portfolio.
Okay.
So you have no idea how much of your electricity is actually being
Coming from
generated, say,
solar,
by wind
coming
or
from-
solar.
okay.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you just know that
Henry County
Duke
REMC has a percentage as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
I
It's the
forget what
same
that
thing.
percentage is, but
Yeah.
It used to be about 10 of renewable. and they're in the process of.
I thought it was 10 to 15%.
It's like,
renewable energy.
The largest energy provider in the country, FP&L, their goal is to be like 35% by like 2030 or 2040 in renewable. They're primarily natural gas and nuclear, but they do have some solar and some wind.
Okay.
But as far as timeline goes, I mean, I think we can have something to, like we did with the CAFO ordinance, something that we can talk about by July. I mean, that's the end of July.
Well, yeah, well, I think that is the,
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
reasonable time.
I'd say by the end of July, there should definitely be something that's coming into form, because we'll bring back the progress at each meeting up until then.
Yeah.
Whatever tweaks we need to do, because the other part is that as we go through, we really need to talk about it at each meeting. So
Right.
we need it to be very public with what we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I just think I don't care when, I just think we need to set a goal so that we try to keep on track and, with it.
Okay, moving on to zoning code. Bill, do you have any update?
Yeah, well,
on-
okay, what I have, two that I have drafts ready is fairly straightforward for me to do, because I had a lot of progress and then I came across a couple excellent versions of home occupations. One in particular was primarily the home-based businesses, which are basically in the developed areas, then home-based businesses in the rural areas. So the only thing with that was then adding in the idea that this is what's exempt from any type of permit, such as a home office. Okay, these are ones that are pretty easy to do. Then there'd be, which is a staff permit, a staff approval. And there's other ones that have the greater potential to actually be a nuisance. Then there will be some that would require them coming before the zoning board.
Based on employees
Yeah,
and
type of
parking.
Yeah, it could be
business.
employees, the type of business, do they
Potential for a
do they
nuisance.
require a larger area than what we have in the ordinance?
Parking facilities.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so things
I
along
read it,
those lines.
thank
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
So-
like a three-tiered
yeah, so I have
system
that
where-
there. The other one, which is really easy to do, because it's bothered me for a long time, is I completed a draft also with the manufactured homes. Because I know it sounds mundane, but the language in that, which is, it got rid of the language of, well, if your home is built between this and this, it's this class. If you're built with here, it's this class. It got rid of that, but it's just making it's like manufactured homes. Here's where they're allowed as say a manufactured home on a pad, you put them on the new property, which you have to let if they meet your minimum square footage requirements, where they require, say, a full foundation, that type of thing. So it's so that's there, and I started working on, it's a little more fiddly than I anticipated, but I'm also working on the part with the parking right now.
One thing, Bill, on the manufactured home
Yep.
part of it, you do differentiate between that and the modular home, right?
Yeah, I do, exactly.
They're stick-built, basically,
Yeah,
modular.
they're stick built, yeah, they're stick built, and the main one is
State standards, and the
Yep,
other one's.
exactly, and they're inspected in the factory by the state of Indiana as a 1 and 2 family dwelling, yeah. The manufactured homes, of course, are HUD,
Yeah,
it's HUD standards.
they're cheap.
No,
No, they're not. There's some good ones, okay.
Yeah, there are some very good ones. They just depreciate just like any other
Yeah,
vehicle, they're
yeah.
considered a vehicle. Your modular homes, well, they will appreciate, but not very rapidly, most of them, a lot of them, because a lot of them are built with 1x4 non-load bearing walls.
They come off the same assembly line, too.
Exactly, and a good way to look at the difference is manufactured home is actually.
Double wides. Sectional.
It's actually built on a wood frame. Your manufactured home, whether it's a single wide or a double wide, is they're on a metal frame.
They have a common wall, yeah, you can tell.
Yeah. Yep. So
So these are two things that you're thinking that could go to the same public hearing then?
Well,
to
not
be
necessarily the
addressed?
same public hearing, I'm also working on the ones within the, because these are accessory uses. Because in all the talk we've had with the accessory uses, and there's things that are in other locations, because a lot of things, even if you need a permit elsewhere, it's based, some other things are accessory uses where you can have them as an accessory. Some things would be an accessory use. For example, the home occupation, that would be an accessory use. And so that type of thing.
And also remembering what we have 59 special exceptions, that some of those could potentially be accessory uses depending on where.
Accessory uses that require a permit.
Yeah, and as opposed to a special exception. So you can move those into accessory use on some of them, and some of them you might leave in a zoning district. It needs to be a special exception. So what might need to be a special exception in a R3 might be a permitted use in an I2 as an accessory. Does that make sense? Yeah, because we have some that are.
We do have a few, primarily, it's primarily certain types of business and industrial
You
uses.
can
where
use
we have
below,
that.
you can't use above without special permission.
What's that?
You can use a property below its zoning, you can't have special permission to go above the zoning.
Yeah. That's a reasonable way to put it. Yeah, it's because the whole idea is that, the idea with the special exception is that it makes kind of sense to put here, but because of the potential for it to be a nuisance or affect neighboring properties for how they're used, that's why they're a special exception. Because there's some unique circumstances that could cause a problem. That's why they get pushed on that level for them to review and then the approval by the zoning board.
And then within the zoning code, something else that I had talked to Bill about is our procedure for temporary uses. So if you want a temporary use as it sits right now, it'll take you at least 2 months to get that temporary use. So you have to apply, wait a month, have a public hearing, and then maybe get your use approved. And I think there's the potential for some of those temporary uses, it can be a staff issued permit. So for instance, if you want a trailer while you're constructing your home, as it sits right now, you have to apply and hopefully be in the timeline within a month to get that public hearing. And then you may or may not get it. So you have these plans to build a house and you need this temporary structure for 365 days while you build your house, but you don't get it, and now you're not going to be able to, you got to find a different way to build your house to give you a temporary use. And I think it's something that we could allow the staff in the area planning office to grant a temporary use on certain things without having to go to a public hearing, because it'll be removed 365 days later.
From my standpoint, a lot of times what you see is somebody who's got a mother-in-law wanting to move in, they section off a part of their house for a mother-in-law unit. Well, that's maybe in a residential area. You got a duplex, basically.
Well, for example, if we got to mention that, is next month, it's out in the county, and there's someone, her mother's elderly. Her father died recently, and then the mother, she's quite elderly, says like, well, do I want to do this or do I want to go into a nursing home? So what it was is, what we're going to have in front of the zoning board is going to be a manufactured home. It's going to be a temporary use for care of a blood relative. And so the question would be, is that ultimately, that question would be, well, is this one that needs to come before the zoning board, or is it going to be one that needs to, should this be a staff? So the other case in certain things that are accessory uses is that, by one thing, when you actually have, it might seem kind of mundane in some cases, requiring a permit location permit, but if there's specific rules someone needs to follow, at least if you have a permit, you have a procedure, is that you aren't doing it right. You got to go back to doing it right as part of your agreement. So then if someone doesn't, then you have a procedure then to go ahead and then go through a procedure with the zoning board to say, if you don't fix it,
Then Bill and Jeff, I guess the question's for both of you from a legal standpoint. If we make some of these issues like a family member staying in a manufactured home for a short term, or the remainder of their time here, if we make that a staff-approved permit, how do we legally word it? I mean, that could be 5 years, that could be 6 months stay. So how do we give him the legal ease, so to speak, to be able to enforce that once?
Well,
Well,
done-
Gary, even
they're
worse
currently
than
done as
that.
a two-year temporary permit.
Then you have to
Because
reapply.
shortly after I started, there was someone who had the hearing, it's gone, you don't need it, so the guy was, you gotta get it's like 2 or 3 months into this, it's like, well, you gotta go ahead and you get it out of here, so this person then directly go to court, nope, sorry, then with the zoning board, it's like, nope, it's gone, you gotta get rid of it. And so of course the guy said, oh, I'll show you, I'll just bring in a bunch of pigs. You're in the agricultural area. So he had to pull it out. He wasn't happy about it, but he had to pull it out. So if they don't do what they're supposed to do, that's where the zoning board comes in and play with things. Because it's a quasi judicial body, is you have that type of authority with things.
So like right now, I think if you put a structure for building a house, I think it's a 1 year, right? You get 1 year on that, on a temporary use
Yeah,
for.
typically it's done, temporary with one, as far as 1 year, yeah.
To answer your question, Gary, in my opinion, you figure out the type of temporary use it would be, and you figure out how long you would want them to have it without having to reapply. I think that's the key, and that's how I would handle it. You know, if every 6 months they have to reapply, because then he can say, well, this is going on 3 years now, and no.
Well, I guess my concern would be, though, Jeff, is if we allow a staff decision on these things, and I have no problem with that, anything to speed things up.
Sure.
But when it comes time for reapplying, I really think the neighborhood should have a say.
And that's something you can give them a short period. This is how much you get to do with administrative approval. Anything above that, you better start planning if you know you're going to need an additional 6 months and go before.
So we could,
Yeah.
You mean grandma's a drug dealer or something?
well, all I'm saying is, some people get to the
I
point where,
understand, Gary.
well,
Yeah,
mom dies or whatever,
I know.
and hey, times have been rough, we need to rent that out.
Exactly, that's the.
I'm
that's
gonna
the
rent
kicker.
that out as long as I can get by with it.
That's what basically happened with that one. They're no longer using it for what it was to be used for.
Yeah.
So another family member moved into it.
And I don't want us to be 2 years trying to get rid of it,
right.
you know, or,
Yeah, because another one we have right there is, along with what Jeff said, is that when we look at the home occupations, because it's accessory use, but they're meant to be just strictly temporary. And so then you look at the time frame for renewing the home-based business. So, it's a similar thing with
Well,
that.
I don't know that those are temporary.
I was gonna say,
No, they are temporary because it's not done as zoning. Because it's done with the intention of, because that's one reason it's stuck under the temporary. And they're good for, it's a 1 year renewal.
So if a hairdresser wants to put a hair salon in her home, they've got to re-up for that every year?
No, what it is, they don't re-up, what they do is there's just a renewal fee, basically. It's maintaining a registration fee is what it's more like. You're registering the home occupation.
so it's basically a yearly permit fee,
That's about what it is.
permitted.
Yeah, so
That
of
allows
course,
you to have that.
so the main problem with things like that, people have done home occupations, like, no, it was a home occupation, it was not a rezone, it was not a special exception. That person moved out, it ends when that person stops, or that person moves, or they stop it.
So that you're differentiate between somebody that wants to go for a special exception.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and some places actually treat a home occupation as a special exception.
Well, that's what I'm saying, we don't.
Now, they call it a temporary, it's classified as a temporary use.
So we don't consider those type of things a special exception.
Yeah, they were-
Because that runs with the land then.
Once you get a special exception, then you get into
So
things
we only
like-
have it as, they
Temporary
essentially,
use.
they got to apply, and then every year they have to come and essentially, okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to item number 3, rules and procedure, BZA finding sheets. Bill, do you have a new finding
Well, I gave those out last month.
sheet?
Yeah.
I know we had some things that needed to be changed on that. Were you able to fill in the,
Oh, yeah, I made a little bit of changes on some of the language, but we'll have one that's set for the, for that temporary use. It'll be a little different than the one with that because you have different criteria that you have to look at for temporary use. But, yeah.
so will we have those for March 2021 to
Yeah.
approve as the new?
Yep.
And those will be approved by this board rather than the BZA, correct?
Well, actually, it's to be the rules of the BZA. There are some things that I still need to do for the APC, for ones that would come before the APC, such as, okay, someone wants to do rezone, okay? Or, something along those lines, or someone's gonna do, say, a subdivision, something that requires the action of the plan commission, those are the ones that you guys would adopt.
Okay.
So those will really be adopted by the zoning board.
Okay.
But, and part of it is also to let you guys know, one of the reasons you also get it, the same reason why I do all these things, also give the same things also to the zoning board, so everybody knows, yes, everybody's on the same page.
I failed to talk to Carrie. Has she gotten back on track with working on the rules and procedures? Or Brian, did you question?
I don't know. I haven't talked to her about that.
I haven't had a chance to talk to Terry about it.
I haven't.
Yeah, because I got an email that said she could not be here this evening, so.
Okay.
But, I didn't say why and I didn't ask why, so.
Well-
If someone chooses to let me know, it isn't any of my business
Hopefully I
otherwise.
can get with her between now and the next meeting and we can get the ball rolling back on those again.
So moving on, another item that's not on the agenda, the CFO public hearing for the ordinance that was created at the end of last year. I have a suggestion for us on that, almost a refresher for March. During our March meeting, we talk about, so I'm sure some of us have put that in the back of our mind, and we look forward to an April public hearing, move to public hearing in April of 2021.
Yeah, because I know that,
That's great.
because Public Course wasn't on the board, so you really need to
Yeah, we have two members who weren't on.
familiarize yourself with it.
It's been 5 months, well, at least 4 months since we've had that discussion, and
And Dale in particular, it's that, before having a hearing, he wants to really familiarize himself with it. Part of what was originally there, what the current one is, and then what this one's.
May I bring up a point real quick?
Yeah, sure.
We approved the minutes from last month, which is fine, but I'm just wondering, we brought up a couple, 3 more things over what the minutes were. Should we approve the current minutes if we're going and add anything to it we're going to talk about in the future?
to the
I don't
agenda.
mind doing what we're doing, I'm just saying, just point of procedure. If you're going to change your program, you need to get approval to do so.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I want to add this in, I want to add this in, I want to add this in.
Yeah.
Okay. Just-
You mean add to the agenda?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
For discussion.
Sure, yeah. It's just something we've always done. I approve this, what we're going to do. No, wait a minute, I want to add something to it. Other than talk about my mother-in-law, we won't talk about that.
So move on to the director's report. I would entertain a motion to accept the director's report.
I'll make that one.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Director's report passes.
Just add a little something on that, some news, is I received the checks and I completed the additional 8 permits for the Tarpon Heights. So there's now a total of 16. They weren't able to start when they wanted to because of the weather. And they contacted me and they're going to apply for they sent me the paperwork for one. And then we actually had a total of, with those and then other permits is, there's a big rush this week. So, actually had, 6, this week, spent my time doing 16 permits this week.
Good.
New homes?
That's good.
8 new homes.
That's great.
That's great. And 8 spec homes up there in Tarpon Heights. So there's a total of 16, and there will soon be a 17th.
Good. That's great news.
It's finally getting here.
Yeah. So, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, and we are adjourned.